UFC 314 is this week. I'm going to give you a full card prediction and breakdown of all 13 fights on this card, starting with Nora Cornolle versus Hailey Cowan. I don't even know if I said the Nora girl's last name right. I'm going to go with Nora in this fight. Hailey Cowan has not fought in 2 years, and when she did fight, she did not look good at all. She looked super green, did like the basic women's MMA stuff, but just at like a super low level, weirdly enough. She was at least like a good enough athlete to do decent on the Contender Series, and somehow they still signed her. But she basically just held her opponent up against the fence, tried to do like the wizard. Her striking looked very low level. Nora Cornolle, at least, I mean, she at least looks like decent, if that really means too much. Like, she looks good at the women's MMA stuff and does have some decent enough striking to where I think she can whoop up Hailey Cowan on the feet. And maybe Hailey Cowan has gotten way better over the last couple of years, so I could be completely wrong here. I haven't seen her training or anything like that. She hasn't had a fight recently, so I don't know how good she'll look coming into this fight. She will be younger than Nora, so if there were improvements, she could potentially look a lot better than Nora in this fight. But you kind of just have to stay with Nora in this one by decision. Let's move on. We have Tresean Gore versus Marco Tulio. I am going to go with Marco Tulio. Tresean Gore actually got knocked out by Cody Brundage, so not good news heading into this fight, because you're going to have to be able to take a punch from a guy like Marco Tulio, who has pretty good power in his hands. Just came off a nice KO against Yair Rodriguez, which you cannot find on, I believe, ESPN Plus or Fight Pass for some reason. I can't find that fight. It doesn't exist anymore. Or at least it won't let you watch it on Fight Pass without like a VPN or whatever to actually, I don't know. Even on ESPN Plus, there's fights that like disappear. Like, I was trying to find a fight from like 2 months ago. I think it was on the like Mackenzie Dern versus, I can't remember who it was. But the card just doesn't exist on ESPN, and you can't watch it because it's been 2 months. So like Fight Pass won't allow it after like 6 months or whatever. So there's some fights that literally just don't exist unless you have a VPN to where you can watch it in like another country or whatever in its full form, weirdly enough. But he had a nice KO over Yair Rodriguez. Had a nice KO on the Contender Series. I just like him KOing Tresean Gore. Tresean Gore beat Josh Fremd and had a decent win over Antonio Tricoli, but you don't really want to be losing by KO to Cody Brundage. So I don't think Tresean Gore is going to be able to submit Marco Tulio in this fight or anything. So I like Marco Tulio. First round KO. Has pretty nice power in his hands. Let's move on. We have Sumudaerji versus Mitch Raposo. Very interesting fight here. Mitch Raposo is still pretty young, 26 years of age. Sumudaerji has been on a 3-fight losing streak. Last fight was against Charles Johnson, where he did defend some of the takedowns decently enough, and Mitch Raposo is going to be looking for the takedowns. So it's going to basically be if Mitch Raposo can get the takedown, maybe control him, beat him up on the ground, and gain rounds that way, or Sumudaerji can defend those and whip him up on the feet, because I do think Sumudaerji is going to be a little bit better than Mitch Raposo on the feet here. And I do see it kind of just being a closer decision, like a 29-28. I think there are rounds where Mitch Raposo is going to be able to land the takedown and dominate Sumudaerji on the ground. And I think there are rounds where Sumudaerji is going to be able to defend the takedowns and outdamage Mitch Raposo on the feet. So I like Sumudaerji. Again, Mitch Raposo hasn't fought in a year, so he definitely could look a lot better in this fight. He's only 26 years of age, and he did go to a split decision with Andre Lima. I don't think it probably should have been a split. It was a relatively competitive fight, but Sumudaerji is still pretty solid. That fight against Matt Schnell was pretty rough. Like, picking-wise, I'm pretty sure I picked Sumudaerji for that fight. I think it was in London or whatever. I picked him. I was very frustrated because he's rocking Matt Schnell all over the place and couldn't finish him. Like, who can't finish Matt Schnell? And it just ended up being one of the more brutal finishes I've ever seen in the last couple of years. So I'm going to go Sumudaerji, though. I think he's going to be a lot better on the feet. We'll have almost a 10-inch reach advantage in this one. So let's move on. I think it'll just be like a 29-28 decision. Could be like a split decision as well. So I think it's going to be very close. Let's move on. We have Sedriques Dumas versus Michał Oleksiejczyk. I'm going to go with Michał Oleksiejczyk. He's fought pretty high-level guys, and that's the reason why he's been losing so much, because he fought, Sharon Magomedov, Kevin Holland, and Michel Pereira, and then he also lost to Cal Bahayo. 4 of those last 5 fights in the last 2 years been to pretty high-level opponents, beaten Chidi and Jokuani. And I just feel like Michał Oleksiejczyk, if you look into his career, I guess he did lose to Dustin Jacoby early on, but he beat the Cody Brundage, he beat the Sam Alvey, beat him. I think he knocked him out in front of his kids, actually. I think that was his retirement fight or whatever. Beat the Modestas Bukowskis. Like, he'll beat the lower-level guys. Sedriques Dumas, though, is beating the Dennis Tululins, is losing to Nursultan Ruzabayev, which, to be fair, I think Ruzabayev was like holding onto his hair or whatever, and he's like using it to get punches, like uppercuts and stuff like that, like pulling his hair down and punching him, which is pretty rough. I don't know how he didn't get like DQ'd or anything, but that's besides the point. He's just beating very low-level opponents, and he's losing to the Josh Frems, and he's losing to the Ruzabayevs of the division, where I think that's where Michał Oleksiejczyk is kind of at this point in his career. He's only 30, so these guys are both pretty young, at least entering their prime at middleweight. I like Michał Oleksiejczyk. In this one, Sedriques Dumas will have, a 5-inch reach advantage in this fight, which may help him, but I just like Michał Oleksiejczyk whipping up Sedriques Dumas here. I don't know if he gets the KO. I don't mind a decision win either, so I do feel a little confident in Michał Oleksiejczyk to get the finish, or not to get the finish, but to get the win here. Let's move on. We have Darren Elkins versus Julian Erosa. There's a part of me that thinks that maybe a Darren Elkins upset could potentially happen here. because Julian Rosa, I just don't really trust his chin too much. He lost to Alex Caceres by KO, lost to Fernando Padilla by KO, and then got 2 decent wins against Ricardo Ramos and then Christian Rodriguez. Christian Rodriguez is just a weird fighter at this point. I'm not going to even bother at this point. He just beats up prospects for some stupid reasons, and I can't beat like an actual opponent. So but I can see Darren Elkin kind of getting maybe potentially subbed in this fight. I feel like Darren Elkins could just throw something wild and like land on Julian Rosa and rock him a little bit. We'll shoot him for a takedown. You'll see like Julian Rosa maybe like lock up a guillotine or something and potentially get the submission. But you kind of just have to go with Julian Rosa. Plus 300 is very tempting for Darren Elkins in this one, because it feels like this is one of those fights where maybe a Julian Rosa could fumble this kind of fight where it's kind of just a little bit of a layup, because Darren Elkins is on a 2-fight win streak as well. Beat TJ Brown, who's pretty solid, Daniel Pineda, who's pretty solid as well. So this will be a very interesting fight. He is 41 years of age, which you don't really want to see too much against a guy like Julian Rosa, but I can see the upset happening. It's just you kind of just have to stick with Julian Rosa in this one. I'm decently confident that he wins this, but I can still kind of imagine him getting hurt pretty badly and potentially TKO'd. So I'm gonna go Julian Rosa. He has good enough grappling. I think if he makes it a scrap on the feet too, I think he can be able to land pretty well on Darren Elkins as well. So let's move on. We have Chase Hooper versus Jim Miller at a minus. I think he's like 850 on FanDuel. I checked right before this. Pretty crazy odds for this one, but I will say Chase Hooper, the more and more I watch him, since that Steve Garcia fight, which he lost by KO, he's been looking good in every single fight after that. He's looking way better on the feet. His grappling is looking very good as well. I think he schools Jim Miller in this one. If you would have asked me maybe 2 to 3 years ago, I think this fight is a lot closer. If not, Jim Miller probably whoops up Chase Hooper in their fight, but he's still 25 years of age, is continually getting better, and could probably be a pretty good contender at lightweight coming up in the next 1 to 2 years, 2026, 2027, which will be very interesting to watch. So I do like that in prospects where they continue to get better, and you can see the improvement, unlike a Bo Nickel, by the way. Kind of pisses me off a little bit, because honestly, I don't know if I want to get into a tangent in this one, but I feel like in 2 to 3 years that we've seen Bo Nickel fight, I haven't seen too much improvement, so it's just really frustrating to watch that. But Chase Hooper is one of those guys where you can see him getting better every single fight. Same thing with like an Oban Elliott. You can see him getting better between every fight. They have really bad striking, and then you just see it continually getting better, and they're improving in their grappling, and they're winning over some decent opponents as well. So I'm gonna go Chase Hooper here. Pretty confident in him winning. How he gets a finish, I can see him getting a sub. I can see him maybe hurting Jim Miller a little bit. If he does get a finish, it probably will be a submission. I don't mind it going to a decision either. So I'm gonna go Chase Hooper's submission. I feel like his grappling is pretty good. Maybe he could potentially take down Jim Miller. Jim Miller can grapple as well, but I feel like Chase Hooper's skill is just way above Jim Miller at this point in his career. So I'm gonna go with Chase Hooper by finish submission in the second round. Let's move on. We have Virna Jandiroba versus Yan Xiaonan. I'm gonna go with Virna Jandiroba. Her grappling, I think, is just too good for Yan Xiaonan. I mean, just look at the opponents she's beaten in her last 4 fights. Amanda Lemos by armbar, Lupi Godinez by decision, Marina Rodriguez by decision, Angela Hill by decision. A lot of decisions, but some decent opponents to have wins over. We saw Yan Xiaonan kind of get out wrestled by Weili Zhang, Weili, however the hell you say their names. She did have a couple moments early on in that fight which were solid, but she's got completely dominated on the ground in that fight. Beat Tabitha Ricci, which is a pretty decent win to have, and Kenzie Dern and Jessica Andrade. But I feel like Virna Jandiroba's grappling is just too high level, and I think Yan Xiaonan just won't have enough, at least in the 3-round fight, opportunities to potentially like KO Virna Jandiroba. I feel like Virna Jandiroba's grappling is just too high level for this one. So I'm gonna go Virna Jandiroba by decision. I don't know if she latches up a sub, but I think she just controls Yan Xiaonan on the ground. So let's move on. We have Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. I'm going to go with Sean Woodson in this fight. I feel like his length in this one will be super difficult for Dan Ige to figure out. They're both pretty decent boxers. I guess that's her primary like skill in this fight is boxing. But Dan Ige can be crafty at certain points, and I feel like early on he always looks pretty good. However, it seems like he kind of withers away during fights, and I just feel like Sean Woodson just being weirdly built. His hands continually get better and better after each of his fights, and he hasn't had like a rough looking fight since the Luis Saldana one, which if Saldana would have followed up with some shots, he would have gotten a win, and maybe Sean Woodson's career looks a little bit different at this point. But he's coming off 4 straight wins over some decent opponents: Bazooka, Charles Jourdain, Caceres, and Fernando Padilla. He got a KO over in his last fight. I just think Danny is just going to have a hard time getting on the inside of Sean Woodson, who's just going to be jabbing at him, probably from range. I don't think he gets the KO over Ige. I don't think Ige gets a KO over Woodson. Maybe Ige can find the body of Sean Woodson, get on the inside, and then beat him up there, and then find his way up top. Ige, I think, can definitely do that. And in the first round, I feel like he'll have a lot of success. I just think as this fight goes on, I think we'll see Sean Woodson start to use that length too as an advantage and whoop up Dan Ige on the feet. So I like Sean Woodson, 29-28 decision. I don't think either one of these guys KOs each other. 50-50 on the picks here. This is like, if I were to make a lock list for top 3 locks on this card, this fight would probably be third on that. I really like Sean Woodson in this one. I feel like it's some decent odds as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go Sean Woodson by decision. I think Danny Gay probably steals the first round, but I don't think he can find the range of Sean Woodson as this fight goes on, but I could be wrong. Let's move on. We have Nikita Krylov versus Dominick Reyes. Ooh, I feel like this is one of the closer fights on the card, along with the Bryce Mitchell and Gene Silva fight. A lot of people are taking Krylov. I do really like both of these guys a lot, especially for this division. They're pretty entertaining to watch. Like, Nikita Krylov is just an absolute dog, and it's good to see Dominick Reyes on the winning end now. I feel like, especially with 2 years off for Nikita Krylov, I know he beat Ryan Spann, and I know Dominick Reyes got brutally KO'd by Ryan Spann a couple years ago, but I don't know, man. I feel like a Dominick Reyes who's got momentum, has got his confidence, has got his timing back. I feel like he's a very hard guy to figure out, especially early on in fights. Nikita Krylov, if you watch the Volkan Ozdemir fight, he's very aggressive. His chin is straight out there. He's just rushing in on Volkan Ozdemir, who already has crazy power. He's rushing in on him, got hurt pretty badly in the first round, eventually rallied back and hurt Volkan Ozdemir a couple times and was able to find the takedowns and wasn't actually able to take down Ozdemir at certain points in the fight, which I think is going to come to a head in this fight as well. I don't think Krylov's going to be able to take down Dominick Reyes early on in this fight, but Krylov was kind of rushing in there super aggressive with his chin out, and I just don't like seeing that against a guy like Dominick Reyes who likes to stay on the outside, uses athleticism, uses timing and his power and clip guys on the chin and put him out cold. Like, you see a lot of his fights end with like a counter left, and then it's just him going for the finish and finishing these guys up on the ground. I like Dominick Reyes in this fight. I don't like the 2-year layoff for Nikita Krylov. He's still relatively young, especially for light heavyweight, 32, almost 33. Very similar reach. I just don't like the inactivity. I feel like he's going to look a little rusty in this fight, but I feel like after the first round, this is one of the fights that I'm probably going to say I'll look at the live betting, because in the first round, if it does get past the first round, I feel like Dominick Reyes is going to be dominating quite a bit in that first round, but I feel like if it gets past the first round, I think you'll want to look at Nikita Krylov in those next couple, and that's what I will say for this fight. I think Dominick Reyes gets Nikita Krylov out of there in the first round. Nikita Krylov is very tough. He's very durable. He recovers pretty well, so it is quite a stretch to pick Reyes in this fight, and this is like pretty much a 55-45 type pick here, because I do really like Dominick Reyes. I just don't like the layoff for Krylov. He's not defensively sound from what I saw against Volkan Ozdemir a couple years ago. I just like Dominick Reyes in this fight, just picking a shot, finding the counter, dropping Nikita Krylov, and then finishing him up with ground and pound strikes on the ground, maybe scrambling around when Nikita Krylov's probably trying to find like a single leg or something to eventually try to out-grapple Dominick Reyes. But I think Dominick Reyes just cleans him up on the ground, gets out of there. However, if he can't find the finish in the first round, I do really like Krylov as this fight goes on. He's very durable. He's pretty much like a scrappy fighter where he'll just be in your face, throw punch like 1-2s, head kicks, and start attacking you and pressuring you. So I think as this fight goes on in the second or third round is when you'll want to look at Krylov. But I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes in the first round. I really hope he doesn't get brutally KO'd in this fight. I'm really rooting for Dominick Reyes for this one. Not for this one in general, but I mean, in general, I'm rooting for Dominick Reyes. I like both of these guys. I wouldn't mind seeing either of them win, but I'm going to go Dominick Reyes. Betting-wise, if it gets past the first round, I would look at live betting Krylov, of course, or at least that's what I'm going to be looking at. So it is pretty 50-50 on Tapology. Very interesting. It's pretty much KO either way, in my opinion. So let's move on. We have Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. You kind of have to go with Yair Rodriguez. Patricio Pitbull's 38 years of age, pretty much. That fight against Shihiro Suzuki, you can find it on YouTube. He kind of just gets into a scrap and just gets put out cold, like brutally. I think it was the first round as well. Gets brutally KO'd in that fight. Came back and fought Jeremy Kennedy a year ago, and eventually found the finish. I think it was like the third round or whatever, but it was a very patient fight. And the thing with Yair Rodriguez is his defense isn't great. Like, he just really moves his chin and tries to tank some shots, and he does move around quite a bit, and he'll fight at range. Like, a lot of those kicks are very tough to deal with. He's not really a boxer, but he can box at points. It is pretty dangerous for him because, again, I honestly don't like his defense. Like, a lot of boxers will have decent defense to avoid some of those shots, but he likes to use his legs quite a bit. So I think he's going to attack the body of Patricio. And in all honesty, I don't see Pitbull looking for like takedowns or anything in this fight. Like, it's his debut fight. He's 38 years of age. I doubt he's looking for takedowns and looking to secure a win that way. So that's why I'm more confident in Yair in this fight, because I just feel like it's just going to be a stand-up fight, and Yair just makes it tough for everybody. Like, the Max Holloway fight he did really well in. Josh Emmett whooped him up. Alexander Volkanovski did really well in the feet against Volk. Eventually got taken down and whooped up, which I just don't see that happening with Patricio Pitbull. And Patricio Pitbull, I won't say he loads up, but he throws a lot of big overhands, a lot of big punches. I feel like Yair it's just really rangy, and I feel like that's very tough to deal with unless you're going to be grappling him in this fight. So I was really disappointed in his last fight against Brian Ortega. I feel like he easily could have whooped up Ortega, and he didn't. He looked really rough in that fight and ended up getting submitted, which was pretty disappointing. And I was really frustrated after that fight, I'm going to be completely honest. Like, Yair Rodriguez was pretty disappointing in that one. But I am going to stick with him in this fight. He's way younger than Patricio Pitbull, almost, 6 years? Not 6 years. Yeah, 6 years younger than Patricio Pitbull in this fight. And I just like him at range in this one, just landing some shots from range. But again, Patricio Pitbull, he can maybe find that big shot on Yair Rodriguez. I don't like Rodriguez's defense in general, but you kind of just have to stick with Rodriguez on this one. I think he's just way more skilled on the feet. So I'm going Yair Rodriguez by decision. Let's move on. We have the big fight of this card. A lot of people are looking towards this fight. We have Bryce Mitchell versus Gene Silva. I am going to go with Bryce Mitchell for this one. I was thinking Gene Silva. Then you watch the Charles Jourdain fight. I believe Gene Silva got taken down 3 times. He made Charles Jourdain look like Petr Yan with some of the craziest, I won't say the craziest takedowns, but he was like putting his leg above his head and kicking his leg out from under, like getting some decent takedowns over Gene Silva, which I've never seen Jourdain do ever. Like he can take down opponents, but it was like he's doing it in style. Like he's making it look nice and everything. And Gene Silva was able to find like a guillotine and like change position so he can get back up to his feet. But I feel like Bryce Mitchell is just levels above a Charles Jourdain in the grappling for sure. And I feel like if Bryce Mitchell kind of sticks to his guns, sticks to his style, doesn't try to go out there and be super aggressive and look to KO like a Gene Silva and try to do too much. I feel like if he sticks to his game plan, looks out for takedowns, mixes in his striking a little bit, I think he can easily out-wrestle and grapple Gene Silva here. Gene Silva, striking-wise, I mean, I always try to do shorts where I break down the fights and how they get the KOs and everything. For Gene Silva, it's always kind of wonky with him because he seems very reactionary, like, or at least sporadic in his striking. Like he'll throw like a jumping front kick or like a jump knee and some wild stuff like a spinning back fist or whatever, like just some crazy shit that he always does. It never feels like it's in combinations and he's setting something up. So I like Bryce Mitchell in this one. I just think he's going to be able to grab a hip of Gene Silva and drag him down. I feel like Gene Silva might be able to get up early on, but I feel like as this fight goes on, we'll see Bryce Mitchell absolutely out-grapple and out-wrestle him. And I feel like Gene Silva at least hasn't been tested enough to know if he's improved in that department. Like obviously when Charles Jourdain takes him down 3 times, he's gotten up from those 3, but Bryce Mitchell's grappling is just on another level than a Charles Jourdain. Like we saw him take down Ilia Topuria, which was pretty impressive. And he hung in there with the striking. I don't like to hold that fight against Ilia Topuria too much because I feel like Ilia Topuria thought he's going to be able to get Bryce Mitchell out of there early because he was throwing and overloading on a lot of his shots and he wasn't really being patient enough on the feet. So I don't hold it too much against him striking-wise. But Bryce Mitchell looked good in that fight for what it was against Ilia Topuria, who was dominating everyone else. Looked really good against Edson Barboza, dropped him early on, and then completely out-grappled him for the rest of the fight. I mean, I feel like this is more on Gene Silva not being tested in the wrestling and grappling, and from what we did see against Charles Jourdain, he got taken down 3 times in that fight. So I'm sticking with Bryce Mitchell in this one. I think he can land takedowns on Gene Silva, control him on the ground, maybe land some strikes on the feet. You do kind of worry about Bryce Mitchell being like super aggressive and Gene Silva able to find that shot defensively, like Bryce Mitchell coming in for a takedown and like you get like a knee or something and Bryce Mitchell goes out. You do worry about that a little bit because Gene Silva is really wild on the feet. But I feel like a Josh Emmett, who Bryce Mitchell got brutally KO'd by, he overloads on just one shot and is always just trying to find that kill shot. Gene Silva, it's always wild. He's always moving around. Like I feel like he's not the type of guy that's going to stick his foot into the ground and throw something crazy. And he will throw, like stylistically, he'll throw something crazy, but not like, he won't overload on his hands to where he's giving up his hips or anything, or he's putting everything in one shot like Josh Emmett does. So that's why I like Bryce Mitchell in this fight. I think he's going to be able to out-grapple Gene Silva. A lot of people are saying Gene Silva KO. Maybe you can hurt Bryce Mitchell a little bit, but I don't know. I feel like he's always throwing crazy stuff. I never really see him like set something up or anything like that. So I could be completely wrong here. Maybe he just chops up Bryce Mitchell in this fight and just whips him up pretty badly. But I like Bryce Mitchell. Find the takedowns. Find good grappling positions. Maybe you can grab a neck of Gene Silva and get the submission with Gene Silva trying to aggressively like get back up to his feet. Maybe he gives up his back at certain points, and maybe Bryce Mitchell can find like an arm triangle or something. I don't know. But I do like Bryce Mitchell. I feel like if it does go to a decision, I am worried about a little bit of a robbery if it is like a little bit closer. I will be completely honest about that. But I feel like Bryce Mitchell can maybe find a submission in the late 2nd or 3rd round with Gene Silva kind of just being a little bit desperate to get back up to his feet, just giving up his back or something, just being a little green in the grappling to where Bryce Mitchell can take advantage of it and find a submission or latch something up. So that's what I have for that fight. Let me know what you guys have down below for that one because I think that fight's pretty interesting. I feel like it could go either way in all honesty. So let's move on. We have Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. I'm going to go Paddy Pimblett. The last time I saw Michael Chandler against Charles Oliveira, like he was able to find the shots on the feet against Charles, and he was just over swinging. And I did see a clip where he's like trying to finish Charles Oliveira up against the fence, and he swings and he like loses his footing and he just falls straight to the ground or whatever. But it's just kind of funny to see. But Michael Chandler still has decent power in his hands. Not decent. He has really good power in his hands. And always has had good defensive grappling, except for against Dustin Poirier where she got submitted, which Michael Chandler just loves to find weird ways to lose to his opponents. Like I'll just go over really quickly. The first Charles Oliveira fight, lost by KO. Charles Oliveira really wasn't known as like a KO guy at that point. Justin Gaethje goes to a decision with him, has a complete war. People thought his chin was done. Goes to a war with Gaethje, loses to submission by Dustin Poirier, takes all of his shots, but somehow with some of the best defensive grappling in this division, at least, gets submitted by Dustin Poirier, and then goes to a decision with Charles Oliveira. Like, just some of the weirdest ways to lose to some of these opponents. Paddy Pimblett, a submission guy who keeps looking better and better, I think, at least since the Jared Gordon fight, in my opinion. I feel like that Tony Ferguson fight, he looked pretty solid in his first fight back in like a year. Looked really good against Bobby Green. I think, like, submitted him in like the first 20 seconds of that fight. Looked really good. Michael Chandler, I feel like he's been looking super thin recently. Like, I feel like in his last fight against Charles Oliveira, he's almost 39. I feel like he's not holding his weight well, at least like he used to. Like, he feels really thin for some reason. I don't know if he's drained or what it is, if he's having a hard time making weight at 155, but he's just not holding the weight well enough. I feel like that power might not really be the same as it used to be. I feel like Paddy Pimblett can find a TKO in this fight. Like, I feel like with Paddy Pimblett being a submission guy, it makes sense for him to get a submission, but I feel like Paddy Pimblett can definitely find the chin of Michael Chandler in this fight. And again, Michael Chandler's submission defense is very good, which is why I don't think Paddy Pimblett can get the submission on Michael Chandler. And I feel like Michael Chandler maybe he might be looking for some takedowns. Maybe that's where Paddy Pimblett can maybe get a submission from off his back, which I think he's very difficult to deal with. But I feel like after the first round, Paddy Pimblett's just going to be able to find the chin on a Michael Chandler, who's going to be a little bit tired, going to be a little overexerted. Maybe he lands a really nice shot on Paddy early in the first round, and he tires himself out trying to be aggressive, and maybe does look for a takedown and eventually tires himself out in the second. And then maybe Paddy Pimblett just finds the chin. And Paddy's striking is decent enough to where I think he could get a KO over Michael Chandler, who's defensively bad at times on the feet. And I don't know. I just don't really trust Michael Chandler at this point in his career. That Conor layoff really put a lot of miles on his career. Like, he was out for 2 years. Very rough for him, especially at the age that he's at. I think that was a pretty rough decision for him. I thought that fight was going to happen. I'm surprised it didn't happen, but I guess Conor, like, ruined Chandler's career, funny enough. So I'm going to go Paddy Pimblett by TKO. I'm going to say second round. I think Michael Chandler tires himself out in the first round. Maybe he hurts Paddy Pimblett a little bit, looks for a takedown, looks for some ground and pound. I think he overexerts himself a little bit. I think he gets way too aggressive in the second round, and I think Paddy Pimblett finds the chin and then wins by TKO in the second. So that's who I have for that one. Let me know who you guys have down below for that pick. It's pretty 50-50 on Tapology. A lot of this card is very 50-50 if you notice. If you look at some of the Tapology picks, I feel like you're going to get some decent bets on some of these fights if you feel very confident in some guys. So let's move on to the main event. We have Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. I'm going to go with Diego Lopes. Unfortunately, Alexander Volkanovski is one of my favorite fighters. His chin, I think, is just done at this point. I do worry a lot about Volkanovski in this, especially early on. Volkanovski hasn't fought in a year, which is good for him. I feel like, if anything, his chin might be a little bit better. Maybe he might take some damage a little bit better than he did in those back-to-back fights against Islam. Got KO'd in that fight pretty brutally. Same thing with the Topuria one. That Topuria one was very, very brutal. He is 36 and a half years of age. Diego Lopes is 30 now. Diego Lopes will have an inch advantage, and reach will be at 5'11", so the size difference will be pretty big. It'll be looking like the Max Holloway and Volkanovski fight. Like, you can see like a pretty distinct height difference in that fight. And Holloway had a really tough time landing on Volkanovski, at least in that third fight where Volkanovski was just too quick and was landing too many combinations. You have a really hard time landing on a guy that's 5'6" with 71 inches of reach. It's just really abnormal for a guy at that height. So he's just very difficult to land on in general. But I feel like if you're Diego Lopes and you have that power, and especially early on where your striking looks a lot better than it does, I think, in 3, 4, and 5, which I will get into in a second. I feel like Diego Lopes can find the KO early on. I feel like he can get into the range of Volkanovski in this fight, where Volkanovski likes to play on the outside. We'll be leg kicking. We'll be going to the body a little bit. We'll be finding the chin of Diego Lopes in moments in this fight. I feel like Diego Lopes can KO Volk in like the second round of this one. I feel like Volk's going to get... he's going to feel himself a little bit, and I feel like as this fight goes on, especially in the second round, he's going to be giving things up defensively on the feet, where his chin's going to be available for Diego Lopes to rush in and land a big shot on him. But I will say, I mentioned it earlier, there's a couple fights where I think live betting. One of them was the Dominick Reyes fight. I think this one will be very interesting. I'm going to be putting my money on Diego Lopes. However, if it gets past the second, maybe third round, I'm going to be looking to put my money on Volkanovski. I feel like Diego Lopes, we've seen him gas a little bit in his last couple fights. He did make 145, I believe it was against Ortega, ended up fighting Ige, who was 2 weight classes above him, so it was like really 160 something versus a 145 pounder, or at least, no, he agreed to 145, made the weight at 145, did a catch weight at 155 with Ortega. Ortega pulled out. Ige came in at like 160, so Diego Lopes was at a massive advantage, which is why he didn't look too great in that fight, but he whooped up Brian Ortega afterwards. I mean, he put on a clinic on Ortega, and was you always see the clip of Lopes, at least recently, where he KOs Ortega and then hits him again and then wakes him back up, which is absolutely insane. Like, Diego Lopes has some crazy power in his hands, and I feel like early on he's going to be able to hurt Volkanovski pretty bad, but again, as this fight goes on, there's a very big and nice, juicy live bet for Volkanovski past maybe second or third round, because I feel like Volkanovski's way of winning is by decision, and it's outstriking and being just too quick for Diego Lopes on the feet. And I feel like if we're looking at a Lopes who's tired, a little bit slower, it's going to be not as defensively good as he is in maybe the first or second round. I think Volkanovski's going to get in that flow state and start tapping him up a little bit in this fight. So I like Volkanovski in 3, 4, and 5, but I just feel like Diego Lopes is going to be able to find the chin and finish him in the second round. So I like Diego Lopes in the second round by KO. I can easily see Volkanovski winning a decision in this one. I don't see him KOing Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes seems pretty durable from what I've seen, and his grappling's always been pretty good as well, so I don't see Volkanovski looking for takedowns or anything, because Lopes is very tricky on the ground, and we've seen Volkanovski get latched up by Brian Ortega, and I think even Lopes maybe got in some difficult situations on the ground, potentially with Ortega at certain moments, but he was pretty much dominating that fight, but there were moments that I guess Ortega did have, but Volkanovski's, I mean, Ortega almost won that fight a couple times. I think it was like a triangle. Was it like a guillotine as well? I can't remember exactly what it was, but I feel like Volkanovski, this won't be a grappling match. Be on the feet. I like 1 and 2 for Diego Lopes, at least dominating. And then I think tide will change a little bit in round 3, and then we'll see 4 and 5 for sure for Volkanovski. So I don't think he'll get to those rounds. I like Diego Lopes by KO, finishing Volkanovski in the second round. Just going over some bets. I've been doing this now. The first, I think 2 weeks ago, I got pretty much all my bets correctly. Last week it was like 50-50 because of the Joe Anderson burrito, and I think I got another pick wrong as well, but I think I got like half of it correct. I don't know where I put the sticky note where I put all the bets on, so I'll just read the ones that I have for this week. It's all money line bets. I didn't go on Bovada for this one, so I guess Bovada has everything uploaded a little bit earlier, but in terms of money lines, I feel like there's some really nice money lines because a lot of these fights, again, are kind of 50-50. So I like Lopes money line. He's minus 102 when I checked on FanDuel. Bryce Mitchell plus 220 money line. I feel like there's a lot of value. If you don't like Bryce Mitchell winning this fight, maybe his value went up a little bit. I think it actually went down as this week went on, because I think he's like plus 250 like 2 days ago. But I feel like even if you do think Bryce Mitchell loses this fight, or not at least loses it, but if you think he like gets eventually KO'd, why wouldn't you put like at least some money on Bryce Mitchell? Which I'm not telling you. I don't know how these rules work, if I'll get in trouble if I say something like that. But what I'm doing is, and what I'm saying is, Bryce Mitchell's line is too juicy not to take at this point. I feel like he has all the tools to beat Gene Silva. Plus 220 feels like a steal. Paddy Pimblett, I think, is pretty much the lock of the card in my opinion. Minus 160 money line. Relatively, I don't want to say it's free money, but I'm pretty certain it's free money. I think I called Joe Anderson Brito free money last week. I don't know. Sean Woodson money line as well, I really like. So just 4 money lines: Lopes, Bryce Mitchell, Paddy Pimblett, Sean Woodson, all pretty close in lines, except for the Bryce Mitchell one. I really like him by underdog, by plus 220 underdog. So yeah, those are my bets that I have. Let me know who you guys have down below in the main event. Who do you guys have on this card? I'll see you guys next time.